What's up guys, it's Manga time. Once again I'm here to bring you my review of Bleach 640 Baby Hold Your Hand 3. As always guys, please subscribe to my videos, I'd really appreciate the support, and give the video a thumbs up if you like what you see, that'd be so great. Let's get straight into the chapter review guys. We get a bunch of colour pages this week. Bleach actually took the Shonen Jump cover this week, and it's actually a pretty good cover. I like it. It's quite dynamic. Basically, it's Ichigo on one side and Uryu on the other, and Uryu's kind of looking off into the distance a bit, almost wistfully, whereas Ichigo's quite focused and determined, and he doesn't look too happy. But I like it how they're parted in the middle by, the words "destiny parted their ways," and there's like red bolts going through them. I don't know if that really has any significance, but either way, it's a really kind of striking cover actually, and I really like it. It's quite powerful. We then get a color manga page, and I just fucking knew there'd be no color in it. I knew there would be no color in it because Kubo is just the absolute worst for this. He can never be bothered to color in the actual manga pages, never be bothered. So the first panel is an eyelid, but it's all black. There's all black. Like, that's not a color page, Kubo. And then it opens up, and we get this girl. Her eyes just open, and she's saying "I," and it says, the name given to her when I first opened my eyes. I really loved that name. And then we see some fingers, and they're all grey, and it's like, for Christ's sake, what? This is not a color page, and that actually kind of annoyed me. Because Kubo doesn't get these color manga pages all that often, and he wastes them pretty much every time he gets them. So that was a bit annoying. I actually thought this was Pernida the first time I read this chapter, and I think we were supposed to think that because of the hand and everything at the bottom. I thought it was Pernida being about to be fused with the hand, and I don't think it was, too unreasonable for me to believe that, because we know that Pernida treasures its name a lot, and it says, the name given to her when I first opened my eyes. I really love the name, and I thought it was going to be like, I love the name Pernida, but no, I think it's actually Nemu. And that's like Mayuri kind of going, how many fingers am I holding up? I think that's what it is. And he's like, hello, hello. And he's trying to talk to her like that. So I was a little bit annoyed at first going into that page until I turned over and I was like, holy shit, this is the best colour page we've ever had. It's finally a picture of every Sternritter together. I have literally been waiting for this forever. Kubo has given me everything I ever wanted in this page. Well, other than that Soul King flashback, still waiting on that. But this is just so brilliant. It looks so fantastic. It really shows off the diversity in their character designs. A couple of things of note. Obviously, Hashwolf at the front there. He's actually wearing a shoulder cloak, which looks like Yuhava's cloak, which is weird. And then Uryu's kind of wearing the same thing, which is, again, weird. Because Yuhava's nowhere to be seen in this picture. So what's the deal with them wearing part of his cloak? What's it symbolising? Is it saying that the two of them make up Yuhava when he's not there or something like that? I don't know, that's weird. Basby, of course, standing next to Hashwolf, which I like a lot. Obviously he's got his pink hair. And this is so great. This is the first time we're ever properly seeing these, like, a lot of these characters in colour. And it's just really awesome. Really awesome. It's like the character's like Jerome Guisbat out there. He wasn't even alive. He wasn't even alive in the manga, which is so that's fine. That's cool. Colonel Sanders with a different tie. BG9 looking cool. I'm hoping the fact that BG9 and Colonel Sanders are there means that Kubo hasn't forgotten about them and will tell us their letter eventually. But Kangdu is there. Kangdu's got such a prominent position, and he was so wasted. But that's annoying. All the Fenritters are there, of course. Giselle kind of sitting on the floor. Interesting, how Candice and Meninas don't have particularly prominent positions compared to the other three. But that kind of makes sense. Master Masculine, Driscoll Bursey is there, obviously. Driscoll Bursey, another interesting thing to note is none of them are wearing capes. So you get to see slightly what they look like without capes on. Driscoll looks kind of cool, actually, but obviously you don't get to see him properly. Kurge on the other side of Hashwolf of the Lloyd brothers. This is just so great. It's so great. Pepe's at the back there. You can't really see him that well. And then the four elites technically, but there's three here. Lil, Pernida, and Gerard get their colours at last. And I think it's interesting that maybe that means that they were only ever three elites before. Another interesting one to note is just next to Giselle there's Gremmy, but he's completely white, and I could have sworn he was never meant to be completely white. So I think that might be reflecting the fact that he is imaginary now, basically. Askin's got a really cool prominent position right next to Uryu. I like to see that a lot. I really think Askin's going to turn out to be quite important in terms of the Sternritter. But next to Master Masculine, kind of right behind Uryu, is Asnot. I don't know why he's like, you can't see him at all, really. His face is like poking through like that. I guess that's kind of the point, because he's meant to be creepy. So he's like staring through the gap sort of thing. But yeah, I kind of wish he was in there a bit more. And Nyan's all Wisel's just off at the side. But yeah, just amazing colour picture, Kubo. Amazing. It's so cool. Anyway, getting on to the actual chapter, because we spent like 5 minutes then on the colour pages. Mayuri is basically laughing maniacally at the fact he's basically defeated Pernida. And he's talking to Ashisogi Jizo, and he's like, how did your stomach feel? You swallowed him whole. And that was good, because if you'd bitten down on him, it would have multiplied and destroyed you. However, Ashisogi Jizo is already in trouble, and I was not thinking Pernida would bust out this quickly, but no, it does, and I actually thought Pernida would go Volsendig to break out of this, but Pernida literally just breaks out. Again, it's typically quite gross. For some reason, my laptop's gone really slow. All of a sudden, there we go. Yeah, Pernida literally just bursts out of it. Like the Bankai just starts like bubbling almost, and when it explodes, its eye goes everywhere because it's just typically disgusting in that way. And literally, like, the actual explosion is disgusting because its eye goes flying, but like its nose and its mouth are kind of like being ripped apart as well. And like we've said many times before, Kubo's just being deliberately gruesome in this arc. But Mayuri like jumps away, and as he's jumping away, this is really cool. I like this because it's a very cool scene. As he's jumping away, this massive arrow comes flying towards him through the kind of remains of Ashisogi Jizo, and he dodges it in a very similar manner to the way he dodged Uryu's arrow in the Soul Society arc, where he sort of goes backwards and the arrow goes over his head, and it completely annihilates one of these buildings behind him. And we see Pernida basically rising out of the body of Ashisogi Jizo, and it's laughing maniacally. It's like, am I imitating your laugh well? And it's holding this bow and arrow, and everything about it just looks so comical, the way it's trying to hold it. But yeah, it's funny. And he's like, you forgot that Pernida is a Quincy, and once again Pernida showing a lot of pride at being a Quincy, which I think is interesting. It seems to really like the fact that it's a Quincy, and it keeps trying to remind Mayuri that. It says, I'm a Quincy, I can kill enemies with bows and arrows. And Mayuri's face is kind of like, shit, I forgot about that. I don't know if his face is saying he forgot about it, or if he's kind of just being like, oh fuck, because he's in trouble or not, but his face is not particularly happy. He then says, oh, it's not a matter of forgetting. I just didn't imagine that the arm of the Soul King would ever admit to something as embarrassing as being a Quincy. So Mayuri's just trying to trash talk now, and Pernida doesn't like that at all, and it says, embarrassing, what's embarrassing about that? And as it says this, it starts to grow its middle finger again, basically. So not only can it rip off body parts to create new arms, it can then just grow them back. So Pernida is actually causing serious problems for Mayuri right now. Like serious problems. Because from what we can see, Pernida can't be killed. Or at least, because clearly it's got a huge amount of brute strength, because it just burst out of Ashisogi Jizo without so much of a problem whatsoever. But now it can dismember itself in an attempt to multiply, but it doesn't matter because it will just come back. It can literally regrow its own fingers as well, which now I think about it, is not that surprising, because it can destroy them. Actually, no, it's regrowing its little finger at this point. It's already got its middle finger back by the looks of things. So yeah, Pernida is just Pernida is, I don't want to say like all powerful, but it is the left arm of the Soul King, so it does make sense that it would be exceptionally troublesome for Mayuri. We then get a bit of the chapter that's actually really quite interesting. and it kind of says, let me just rearrange the camera a little bit. Yeah, he kind of says, I've always been a Quincy, and that's very interesting. Mayuri picks up on the fact that Pernida's becoming more eloquent, the more and more the fight drags on. And we've all picked up on that as well. That was something I mentioned in last week's review, that it's becoming more, its speech is more and more coherent. And Mayuri thinks there's something weird about the way it says I've always been a Quincy. Now, could it be that Pernida is literally the voice of the Soul King right now, and it's just revealed that the Soul King has always been a Quincy? I mean, that would make a hell of a lot of sense, because the Soul King has the eyes of the multiple irises, which would imply, as Yuhava said, it's a true Quincy. So Mayuri's kind of doing some thinking. He's like, is it recovering memories as the Soul King? And he's kind of like, or, is it something else? Is there something else going on here? Oh, great, camera's going over. And then he says, is it just evolving for some reason? And that, to be fair, would make a lot of sense, because Mayuri said it was the arm of advancement. And so, that would kind of make sense if it was evolving, but I think there's definitely more to it than that. I think Kubo's definitely talking about it possibly being the voice of the Soul King, and it's talking, about the Soul. It's how do I put this? It is the Soul King's voice coming through Pernida in a way. So when it says, I've always been a Quincy, and its voice changes when it says that, that's the Soul King revealing it's been a Quincy. But anyway, it gets bows and arrows on the tips of all of its fingers, and it fires off a bunch of arrows towards Mayuri. The arrows are actually connected to its nerves as well, which I thought was a very, very cool little creative thing there. But yeah, the arrows are connected to its nerves, and they manage to get Mayuri's arm. And basically, I think Mayuri blows his arm off to try and stop the nerves, obviously warping him. But yeah, his arm gets completely blown off. I'm not sure if he's still got the whole messed up arm from the other week. I didn't actually notice, but yeah, he blows his arm off. It's actually quite dynamic. He's literally just grabs his arm as soon as it gets caught by the nerves, and it just detonates, which is pretty bad news for him. And he's actually really struggling right now. And like I said, I really wanted to see this, and I love the fact that he's struggling. The arrow, and I like this as well, when another one of the arrows goes flying towards the ground, it gets picked up by one of the nerves that's on the ground. The nerve bends the arrow and sends it flying back to Mayuri. I really like that, and that's quite creative as well. But literally, Mayuri's like, oh crap, I'm actually going to get hit by this one. I'm in serious trouble. It was very predictable what was going to happen now. Nemu jumps in the way. She sort of like grabs the arrow, but then like her arm gets slashed off. And then she basically, I think she like grabs the arrow. I think she grabs the arrow before it cuts Mayuri, and then she cuts her arm off. So that obviously the same deal. She doesn't get warped by the arrow, and she doesn't die basically. Actually, Mayuri saves her life here, even though it doesn't really look like it. She's kind of falling to the ground at this point, and presumably if she hits the ground, she would die, because that's what Mayuri says anyway. Or presumably the nerves would get her. I think maybe it was what it is. But Mayuri basically, he grabs her and he throws her against the wall. Now, obviously Mayuri's not particularly nice to Nemu, but I do think that was his way of saving her life, because he's like, idiot, I didn't order you to come out. If you'd fallen to the ground, you'd be in pieces by now. And I like that it's Mayuri's kind of own bitchy way of caring about Nemu. That he's like, I saved your life by smacking you into a wall, but he technically did save her life. And so, she's like, I'm sorry, and I thought you needed a shield. And he's like, I don't remember teaching you to join a fight based on your own judgment. And this is interesting. I actually do like these last few pages, even though it's not how I expected the chapter to end, but we'll get into that in a minute as well. Nemu's like, oh, you didn't teach me that. And he's like, you saying you've learned something on your own to do things I didn't teach you? And so presumably that's what all the ominous panels of Nemu were in the last few chapters, was her kind of deciding on her own to jump in and save Mayuri. And she's like, I don't know. And Mayuri then starts talking to her, and he's like, Nemu, no. And that's not her real name. Her name is actually Nemuri Nanago, which I believe means the seventh Nemu, which is actually kind of dark when you think about what's happened. Presumably, I mean, we don't know just yet, but like I said, like I actually said, I thought we were going to get a Nemu creation flashback, and that's actually what I still think we'll get. I think we'll get the continuation of what we got at the beginning of the chapter. But he's like, since Ichigo's gang showed up, we've been through a number of fights, and I've taught you too much. Do you know how difficult it would be for me to raise the next you in exactly the same way I raised the current you? So I think that's his roundabout way of saying I don't want to lose you. That's Mayuri's roundabout way of saying it. His way of saying it is it would be so difficult for me to make another one that's just like you, which is his way of saying I don't want to lose you. I think we're supposed to be trying to feel some sympathy for Mayuri here, even though he's a monster. But for some reason he's grown more attached to her since the Soul Society arc, when he was a complete monster to her. But I think it's interesting that there have been 7 Nemus. Is it all the same Nemu, or is she a completely new model? And if so, who was the basis of the first Nemu? Was it Shooterer? That'd be kind of cool if it was Shooterer. But yeah, she says, I don't know how you'd rebuild me. And he says, if you don't know that, then don't move on your own judgment. And then, so he's pretty pissed off. And he's like, he basically says, when I don't move unless I order you to, if you understand, stand up. And Nemu says, I understand, Mayuri-sama. And that's the end of the chapter. And I thought that was quite, what's the word? An understated chapter ending. I thought it was going to be a little bit more dynamic than that. Like I thought Pernida was going to smack Mayuri around this week. I mean, he does a bit, but I wasn't expecting all this Nemu stuff. Like I wasn't expecting her to suddenly have this kind of past that we were about to explore. So that's interesting. Like I did say, I thought we'd get at least a flashback of her creation, and everything here is still signalling Mayuri's demise. I'm just saying, everything is still signalling that he's probably going to die. So yeah, good chapter this week. I loved the colour pages. There wasn't a whole lot of progression. The fight is still going strong. Honestly, quite surprisingly. And I think this could be going now for another couple of chapters, because it might even take us to the end of the volume, which means this fight would have been almost a whole volume. Which is fair enough, because Pernida's an elite, and I actually appreciate the fact that the elites might get long fights. I'm perfectly fine with it. But yeah, it's still a decent fight. There's still good choreography, and Mayuri is getting knocked around a bit, which I like as well. And Pernida becomes more and more interesting. Unfortunately, Kubo only just gives us tiny little tidbits every week in terms of Pernida. She's definitely getting smarter. Something's definitely going on there with her and the whole Soul King deal. So yeah, we're going to have to wait and see, I'm afraid, as far as Pernida goes. With Nemu and Mayuri, one of them could die, both of them could die. If both of them died, that'd be pretty sad, actually. But it looks like we are going to find out more about Nemu. I think next week could start again with a flashback of her creation, which would be kind of neat. But yeah, guys, that's it from me this week. I'm probably going to drop a 3 out of 5 on this week. Most of it is down to the fact that the colour page was fucking amazing. But the artwork's always good. The fighting is decent. And it's interesting that we're starting to get this development for Mayuri and Nemu, and possibly Pernida as well. But I'm not really going to rate it higher than that until we actually get said development. So next week could be a good one. But yeah, we'll have to see. But let me know in the comments below, guys, what you thought of this week's chapter. Did you like it? Are you still liking the fight? Do you like where the whole Mayuri Nemu thing's going? And who do you think the basis was for the first Nemu, if it was anyone at all? Could it have been like maybe an actual daughter of Mayuri's that he lost at some point or something like that? That'd be interesting. Or maybe it was his daughter and he experimented on her to create the first Nemu. I don't know. It's up in the air at the moment. But let me know in the comments below, guys, what you think. And as always, guys, subscribe. That'd be super great. But until next time, see you later.